The evening sun was dipping low over the quiet neighborhood as Officer James wrapped up what he expected to be an uneventful shift. The steady hum of his patrol car had almost become a calming background noise, when suddenly, the air was pierced by a desperate sound, a child's cry, sharp and urgent, slicing through the stillness. He turned quickly, his eyes locking onto a little girl, no older than 6, running frantically toward his vehicle. Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her small hands trembling as she struggled to speak through sobs. Her pink dress was rumpled and wrinkled, her hair a messy halo around her face, giving the impression that she had been running for quite some time. When she reached him, her voice broke with urgency and fear as she pleaded, "Please follow me home." There was something in her eyes that caught him off guard, not just fear, but a raw mixture of desperation and hope that made it clear this was far more than a child having a bad day. It was a cry for help, and every instinct James had as a protector, as a human being, screamed that he couldn't ignore it. Before we continue this story, we invite you to pause for a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of compassion to change lives, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us continue to share heart-touching stories like this one and inspire others to do good in a world that needs it now more than ever. Without wasting a second, Officer James opened his car door and stepped out. He crouched down to the girl's level, softening his expression and speaking gently to reassure her that he was there to help. Her tiny hand, cold and trembling, wrapped around his fingers, tugging him forward as she urged him to follow. Her steps were quick and filled with purpose, yet she said little along the way, only glancing back occasionally to make sure he hadn't fallen behind. The path she led him down wound through quiet, aging suburban streets. The deeper they went, the more James noticed the subtle signs that something wasn't quite right: faded houses with chipped paint, yards left untended, and an eerie silence hanging in the air like a warning. When they finally reached the house, James felt a chill crawl down his spine. It was small and worn down, with wild weeds overtaking the yard and a front door that stood slightly ajar. The girl paused at the threshold and pointed inside, her voice no more than a whisper as she said that her mommy was in there, and she wouldn't wake up. James's chest tightened. With careful steps, he moved into the house, senses heightened, heart pounding. The dim light inside revealed a living room steeped in neglect. Empty food containers littered the floor, bills and envelopes were scattered across worn furniture, and the air held a stale, heavy stillness that told a story of struggle and sorrow. What had begun as an ordinary patrol was now a moment that could change everything, not just for the girl, but for everyone touched by the ripple of his compassion. Following the little girl's lead, Officer James stepped cautiously into a small, dimly lit bedroom. The air was heavy with worry and silence, broken only by the soft whimpering of the child beside him. On the bed lay a young woman, barely in her 20s, completely motionless. James rushed to her side and immediately checked for a pulse. Relief washed over him when he felt the faint, slow rhythm of her heartbeat. She was alive, but barely. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale, and it was clear she wasn't just sleeping. She was in serious distress and needed urgent medical attention. Without wasting a moment, James reached for his radio and called in for an ambulance, his voice calm but firm. As he waited, he turned his attention to the child, keeping his tone soft and reassuring as he asked gentle questions to soothe her trembling nerves. Her name was Emily. Through quiet sobs and halting breaths, she explained how her mommy had been sick for several days. She had tried to make soup for her but couldn't reach the stove, and she was too afraid to leave her side, until today, when something inside her told her she needed to get help. That's when she saw the police car and ran. Her courage and instincts had likely saved her mother's life. When the paramedics arrived, they quickly stabilized the young woman and carefully moved her onto a stretcher. As they wheeled her away, Emily clung tightly to James' uniform, her small arms wrapped around him like a lifeline, refusing to let go. The fear in her eyes was too much to bear. James knelt beside her and promised gently, "I'll stay with you, Emily. You're not alone." True to his word, James drove Emily to the hospital, her tiny hand clutching his the entire time. The emergency room's harsh lighting and sterile smell felt overwhelming, especially to someone so small, but James never once let go of her. They sat side by side in the waiting area, hour after hour, surrounded by the quiet beeping of machines and the steady rhythm of hurried footsteps. He distracted her with small talk, coloring books from the front desk, and gentle reassurances that her mommy was in good hands. Eventually, a doctor approached them with an update. Sarah, Emily's mother, had collapsed from a combination of severe exhaustion, dehydration, and untreated pneumonia. She had been pushing herself beyond her limits, working multiple jobs, skipping meals, ignoring her own health, all in a desperate effort to take care of her daughter. As James listened, a wave of sorrow settled over him. He couldn't stop thinking about the small, cluttered home, the neglected yard, the pile of unpaid bills scattered across the living room. It was heartbreakingly clear that Sarah had been fighting a silent battle, struggling in silence, too proud or too afraid to ask for help. Yet, in the middle of all this hardship, her daughter had shown extraordinary bravery, and it had made all the difference. Emily sat quietly in the hospital waiting area, her tiny frame curled up as she hugged her knees, her eyes scanning each passing nurse with quiet desperation. Every time someone in scrubs walked by, she glanced up with a flicker of hope, silently wishing they might bring news about her mother. Beside her, Officer James knelt down once more, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. His voice was calm and steady as he promised her that everything would be okay. And in that moment, Emily believed him. Over the next few days, while Sarah remained in the hospital recovering, James made it a point to visit often. Each time he arrived, Emily's eyes lit up just a little more. Slowly but surely, the fear in her began to fade. She started to smile, even laugh softly. She had found comfort, safety, and trust in the man who had shown up when she needed someone most. Through his visits, James learned more about Sarah's life, a story of quiet resilience and hidden hardship. Emily's father had abandoned them not long after her birth, leaving Sarah completely alone, with no nearby family or reliable support. Despite the crushing weight of single motherhood, Sarah never gave up. She took on cleaning jobs during the day and worked late into the night, stretching every dollar to provide for her daughter. All the while, she kept her pain hidden behind a brave face. She didn't complain, didn't ask for help, just kept pushing forward for Emily's sake. But James saw clearly now, if no one stepped in to change their circumstances, this cycle of exhaustion and struggle would start all over again the moment Sarah was discharged. And this time, she might not survive it. Determined to make a difference beyond that one hospital visit, James began working quietly behind the scenes. He reached out to local charities, community groups, and even some of his fellow officers. With each call, each conversation, word spread, and soon, the kindness began to multiply. Donations started pouring in, groceries, clothes, home essentials, even financial aid. A small network of compassion began forming around Sarah and Emily, built by people who were moved by their story and inspired by the bravery of a little girl who ran for help when it mattered most. When Sarah was finally strong enough to leave the hospital, she returned home expecting to pick up the broken pieces of her life. But instead, she was met with a miracle. The house had been cleaned top to bottom. The once empty kitchen was stocked with fresh food. Repairs were underway on the broken fixtures and worn-out walls. It was as though someone had pressed pause on the chaos just long enough to give her a fresh start. Overwhelmed, tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as she took it all in. She wasn't alone anymore. She didn't have to carry everything by herself. That day, Emily beamed with joy brighter than James had ever seen. She ran into her mother's arms, clinging to her with a mixture of relief and happiness. Then she turned and ran to James, wrapping her small arms around him in a tight hug, whispering a soft, "Thank you," that he would carry in his heart for years to come. The story didn't end there. The neighborhood, having witnessed this act of community and compassion, didn't forget. They continued to check in on Sarah and Emily, offering support, friendship, and encouragement. Sarah found a more stable job, one that allowed her to work fewer hours and spend more time with Emily. Slowly, their lives settled into a rhythm of peace and healing. One quiet evening, James stood outside their home, watching Emily giggle as she chased Bubbles in the yard while Sarah laughed with a neighbor on the porch. He realized then that this had never just been about one act of kindness or one rescue. This was about hope. It was about the power of one small voice, Emily's plea for help, that sparked a ripple of compassion capable of changing lives. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful, real-life reminders that kindness still exists, and that sometimes, even the quietest voices can create the loudest echoes of change.